Have you ever woken up with the feeling that something crucial has been ripped from you? Not an object, not a person, but a piece of your own time, your own history. I'm Lena, and my life, or what's left of it, started on Thursday. At least I think so. The exact date? Unattainable, like smoke at your fingertips. The first thing I saw was the white ceiling, then the empty walls of a room I didn't recognize. The air was heavy, smelling of antiseptic and dust, and the silence was so dense it seemed to scream. My heart pounded, a frantic drum against my ribs. Where am I? Who am I? These questions echoed in my mind, but there were no answers, just a deafening void. My head ached, a constant throb behind my eyes, as if a plug had been pulled, draining all my memories. I stood up. My feet touched a cold linoleum floor. My body felt awkward, like I was using it for the first time. I looked at my hands, short nails, no polish, thin fingers. Definitely mine, but strange. There was a mirror on the opposite wall. My reflection stared back. Light brown hair, large, frightened eyes, a young face, but marked by deep confusion. I didn't recognize myself. It was like seeing an old photo of a stranger. "Who are you?" the image seemed to ask back. There was a gray metal door. I tried to open it. It was locked. No windows. Just a white cube room, a simple bed with gray sheets, and a small closet that revealed only a plain cotton jumpsuit, identical to the one I was already wearing. No pockets, no labels, no clues. Despair began to rise. There was no clock, no calendar. My phone? I didn't have one. Nothing to connect me to the outside world or whatever outside was. Hours passed. I don't know how many. Hunger started to gnaw, and an intense thirst left my throat dry and scratchy. That's when I noticed a small, almost imperceptible crack in the wall, from which a thin mist seemed to dissipate into the air. Suddenly, a soft click opened the door. Before me, a long, equally white corridor lit by a cold, uniform light. No people, no one. I decided to go forward. There was nowhere else to go. My footsteps echoed in the corridor, a lonely, terrifying sound. I felt a shiver. That smell of antiseptic and dust was stronger here. There was a series of doors identical to mine, lined up on both sides, all closed. It was like a monochrome maze. At the end of the corridor there was a fork. Left or right? A choice without basis, without intuition. I chose right. The corridor continued with more doors. Each one seemed to stare at me, guarding secrets I couldn't access. I spotted a screen, set into the wall, that looked like an old television, but it was off. I tried to touch it, and it lit up with a flickering static before displaying a single word. Welcome. My mind reeled. Welcome to what? This prison of forgetfulness? The screen flickered again and a line of text appeared below. The test has begun. Test? What test? Who is testing me? With each new piece of information, more questions arose, and the void in my memory became more terrifying. I felt a chill down my spine. This wasn't a game. It was something more. I was being watched, but by whom and why? I kept walking, my senses heightened. Every shadow seemed to lurk, every sound, or lack thereof, kept me on high alert. I reached a larger room. It was circular, with a central console that had several buttons and a larger screen, similar to the one I'd seen in the corridor. There were empty metal chairs around the console. I felt a morbid curiosity. I approached, my heart pounding. The console screen was on and displayed a complex graph with lines and blinking dots. It made no sense. In the center of the screen, in large letters, was written, "Response parameters active." Next to it, in a smaller font, was a countdown timer. 0:05:47. Panic began to rise in my throat. What happens when the counter reaches 0? An alarm? A release? Or something worse? My eyes scanned the room, looking for an exit, an explanation. Nothing. Just the soft hum of the console and the invisible ticking of time. I felt an invisible hand push me towards the screen. I needed to understand. I touched the screen. The graph changed and a series of words began to scroll rapidly. Neural connection, data processing, fragment recovery. Imminent reboot. Reboot. I repeated the word aloud, my voice hoarse, almost a whisper. Of what? The counter reached around 30. My breath caught in my throat. I had to escape. But where? I ran back down the corridor, heading back the way I had come, the white walls seeming to close in on me. The doors, which once seemed like mere passageways, were now impenetrable barriers. The antiseptic smell intensified, almost suffocating. The hum of the console seemed to follow my steps, growing in volume. I reached my room door, desperately trying to open it, but it was locked again. I banged on it with my fists, a hollow, useless sound. The counter reached 005. A flash of white light blinded me, coming from all directions. I felt a sharp pang in my head, the same pain as before, but 1,000 times stronger. My knees gave out. I fell to the cold floor, the light swallowing me. One last thought before darkness consumed me. Where was I? Have you ever felt the repetition? Not like a fleeting déjà vu, but as if the same moment is folding in on itself, a nightmare that refuses to end. I'm Lena, and my life, or what's left of it, started on Thursday. At least I think so. The exact date, unattainable, like smoke at your fingertips. The first thing I saw was the white ceiling, then the empty walls of a room I didn't recognize. The air was heavy, smelling of antiseptic and dust, and the silence was so dense it seemed to scream. My heart pounded, a frantic drum against my ribs. Where am I? Who am I? These questions echoed in my mind, but there were no answers, just a deafening void. My head ached, a constant throb behind my eyes as if a plug had been pulled, draining all my memories. This is the exact same beginning, I know. I feel it. A sickening familiarity settled in, a shiver that came not from the cold, but from the repetition. The headache, the smell, the silence. I've been here before. I've lived this. But how? When? My memories were still blank, but the feeling of a vicious cycle was undeniable. My body seemed to move on its own, with a strange premonition of what was to come. I got out of bed. My feet touched the cold linoleum floor. My body felt awkward, yet strangely familiar. I looked at my hands, short nails, no polish, thin fingers. Definitely mine, but with a sense of repeated use. The mirror on the opposite wall stared back. Light brown hair, large eyes, now not just frightened, but with a shadow of recognition. A young face, but marked by a deeper confusion, a terrifying understanding. I didn't fully recognize myself, but the reflection held a fragment of my previous panic. The gray metal door. I tried to open it. It was locked. No windows. The same white cube room, the simple bed, the small closet with the jumpsuit. No pockets, no labels, no clues. Despair began to rise, but this time, with a tinge of disillusionment. I had felt this before. Hours passed. I don't know how many. Hunger and thirst returned. A physical reminder of time passing and being lost. That's when I noticed the small crack in the wall, the mist seeping through. It was like a trigger. The soft click opened the door. Before me, the long, equally white corridor, lit by the cold, uniform light. No people, no one, just like before. I decided to go forward. My footsteps echoed, but now there was an urgency to my pace. I wasn't just exploring, I was reliving. The smell of antiseptic and dust, now associated with this repetition, was nauseating. The identical doors, the fork, left or right. Last time I chose right. What if the wrong choice led me back to the beginning? The logic was fragile, but the hope of breaking the cycle was powerful. I chose left. This corridor also continued, with more doors. I spotted another screen on the wall. I tried to touch it. It lit up with static and displayed the same word, welcome, and the line of text below, the test has begun. A pang of frustration. Apparently, the choice of direction didn't alter the start of the test. I kept walking, but now with a sense of determinism. The doors stared at me, and I felt a slight tremor coming from one of them. The door that previously seemed identical to the others now had a different aura. I approached it. There was a small, almost imperceptible engraving near the doorknob. a thin line that wasn't on the others. There was something different here. I wasn't just reliving. I was noticing details that had escaped me before. I felt a force pulling me towards this specific door. I tried to open it, but it was locked like the others. However, this time, I didn't just feel the obstruction of the metal. I felt a cold energy coming from within. I continued down the left corridor. I reached a larger room, exactly like the one on the right, but there was a subtle difference. It was circular, with a central console that had several buttons and a larger screen. The empty metal chairs. The console screen was on and displayed a familiar graph. In the center of the screen, response parameters active, and next to it, the countdown timer. 0.0547. Panic rose again, but this time mixed with a cold fury. It's a cycle. I'm trapped in a cycle. I looked at the console buttons. There were many, but one of them, a small, isolated red button, blinked softly. It was the only one that displayed a subtle glow. I tried to touch the screen again. The graph changed and the words scrolled rapidly. Neural connection, data processing, fragment recovery, imminent reboot. Reboot. My voice came out louder now, almost a shout. Stop. The counter reached $0.30. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't let this happen again. I had to break the cycle. My eyes fixed on the red button. It was the only new variable, the only hope. With my heart pounding, I reached out and pressed the button. Nothing happened immediately. The console's hum grew sharper. The screen flickered but didn't change. The counter continued its relentless countdown. U0.05. I felt the flash of white light blind me, coming from all directions. The sharp pang in my head, the same pain as before, but amplified, tearing my consciousness apart. My knees gave out. I fell to the cold floor, the light swallowing me. One last thought before darkness consumed me. The button. What did it do? Have you ever felt the familiarity of a nightmare? That chilling sensation that, even in an unfamiliar place, every detail is part of a cruel routine you can't escape. I'm Lena, and my life, or what's left of it, started on Thursday. At least I think so. The exact date, unattainable, like smoke at your fingertips. The first thing I saw was the white ceiling. Then, the empty walls of a room I didn't recognize. The air was heavy, smelling of antiseptic and dust, and the silence was so dense it seemed to scream. My heart pounded, a frantic drum against my ribs. Where am I? Who am I? These questions echoed in my mind, but there were no answers, just a deafening void. My head ached, a constant throb behind my eyes, as if a plug had been pulled, draining all my memories. The same feeling, the same room, the same smell, the same headache. I knew this would happen. The red button didn't free me. It brought me back, but not exactly the same. This time something was different. I could feel it. There was a faint memory of the button, a spark amidst the void. My memory wasn't completely erased. There were remnants. I got out of bed with a cold determination. My feet touched the cold linoleum floor. My body was no longer awkward. It moved with a strange familiarity, almost with a purpose. I looked at my hands. My reflection in the mirror stared back. There was a new intensity in my eyes, not just panic, but a fierce glint of defiance. I recognized myself. I was Lena, trapped in this cycle, but not completely lost. The gray metal door. I tried to open it, locked. The closet with the identical jumpsuit. I dressed, my movements automatic, as if I had done it countless times. And in fact, I had. But this time, as I slid my hands over the non-existent pockets, I felt something. A slight raised area. With my thumb, I felt a tiny bump. It was a switch, almost invisible. I pressed it. A small click. Hours passed. I don't know how many. Hunger and thirst returned, but now I saw them as markers of time, not just sensations. The soft click of the door made me turn. The long white corridor stretched before me, the same cold light. But this time, instead of total silence, there was a faint hum in the air, almost imperceptible. Not the console's hum, but an energy hum. I decided to go forward. My steps were more confident, less hesitant. The antiseptic smell seemed different, mixed with something metallic. The fork. Left or right? I knew both would lead to the same console, the same countdown timer. But what if the switch in the jumpsuit made a difference? I chose left, the same choice as last time, where I had noticed the engraving on the door. The corridor continued, the doors identical. The screen on the wall lit up, "Welcome," and the line below, "The test has begun." Frustration, yes, but with a new kind of hope. I passed the door with the engraving. I looked at the small switch in my jumpsuit. What if it was for this door? The hum in the air grew stronger as I approached it. I reached out and felt the engraving. Without thinking, I pressed the switch in my jumpsuit while touching the engraving on the door. An audible click, different from the click that opened my room door. The engraved door creaked softly and opened. It revealed not a white corridor, but a dark, damp, narrow tunnel with rough stone walls. The smell was of wet earth and ancient mold, completely different from the antiseptic. A cold breeze came from within. My heart beat faster. This was new. This was an exit, or a different trap. But it was change, and I was desperate for change. I entered the tunnel, the door closing softly behind me. The darkness was almost total, and the flashlight in my jumpsuit, activated with that switch, was just a faint beam ahead. I didn't remember having a flashlight before. Were the reboots giving me tools, perhaps? The tunnel was long and winding. I could hear water dripping somewhere in the distance. The hum I had heard in the corridor turned into a soft murmur, like indistinct voices echoing in the depths. I started to run, propelled by an inexplicable force. Suddenly, the tunnel opened into a vast cavern. The air was cold and damp. In the center, there was an underground lake of dark, still water, so mirrored that it reflected the rock formations of the ceiling, creating an inverted and perfect image. The murmur of voices became clearer, coming from the lake. There were many voices, overlapping, but unintelligible. Floating in the center of the lake, there was a crystal pedestal, radiating a soft, bluish glow. On top of the pedestal, something pulsed with a faint light. An orb. It was small, the size of my palm, and seemed to be made of condensed mist, emitting a low, constant hum. The hum I had heard since the corridor, but now much stronger, pulsating. I felt an irresistible pull. I approached the edge of the lake. The water was icy, but there was no way to cross. The voices from the lake grew in volume, forming a chorus that seemed to call my name. Lena. Lena. The orb on the pedestal glowed brighter, and the hum became a vibration that reverberated inside my chest. I knew what I had to do. Why did I know? How? It didn't matter. I stretched out my hand towards the orb, even knowing I wouldn't reach it. But the intention was there. The moment my hand stretched out, the orb floated from the pedestal and came towards me, crossing the distance over the lake. It hovered before me, just inches away. The voices of the cavern became a collective whisper. Take and no. With a trembling hand, I touched the orb. The hum intensified, filling my head. And then, memories came. Not my lost memories, but images, sounds, sensations that weren't mine. I saw a man, in a laboratory, surrounded by complex equipment, working incessantly. I saw graphs, equations, calculations. I heard words. Stabilization systems, temporal field, Project Chronos. The man looked exhausted, obsessed. The images accelerated. I saw a moment of panic, red alert lights flashing, sirens blaring. The man shouting, "Containment failure! Reboot required! Save the project!" The headache returned, sharper than ever, as the memories flooded my mind. They weren't just images. They were years of work, of research, of despair. I felt the man's mind, his obsession, his failure. The cavern disappeared. The orb vanished. The white light, the excruciating headache, and then the familiar white ceiling. Have you ever lived a truth that refuses to be undone? A revelation so overwhelming that it blends into your very essence, even when the world around you restarts. I'm Lena, and my life, or what's left of it, started on Thursday. At least I think so. The exact date, unattainable like smoke at your fingertips. The first thing I saw was the white ceiling. Then, the empty walls of a room I didn't recognize. The air was heavy, smelling of antiseptic and dust, and the silence was so dense it seemed to scream. My heart pounded, a frantic drum against my ribs. Where am I? Who am I? These questions echoed in my mind, but there were no answers. Just a deafening void. My head ached, a constant throb behind my eyes, as if a plug had been pulled, draining all my memories. But there was no void this time. Not completely. The memories of the man, of the lab, of Project Chronos, they were there. Fragmented, distorted, but present. They were mine now, mixed with my own confusion. I had access to truth, one that the test tried to erase. I remembered the pain of the red button, the choice of the left door, the tunnel, the orb. The loop was becoming more complex, but also more revealing. I wasn't just reliving, I was accumulating. I got out of bed with a new urgency. There was no time to lose. My movements were precise, every gesture charged with newfound knowledge. I looked at my hands, and my reflection in the mirror stared back. My eyes now held an ancient knowledge, a grim understanding of my purpose. I was Lena, the recipient of forbidden truth. The gray metal door. I tried to open it. Locked. The jumpsuit. I put it on automatically, my mind already focused on the tiny switch. I pressed it. The soft click. I felt a jolt of energy, an almost imperceptible recognition. The jumpsuit's flashlight turned on, a faint light that now seemed like a guide. My room door opened. The corridor stretched out. The hum in the air was more audible now, like a rhythmic pulse, a sound that once scared me and now guided me. The smell of antiseptic and metal. Everything was clearer. I went straight to the left. I knew it was the way to the tunnel. The identical doors passed, but my eyes fixed on the door with the engraving. The hum intensified as I approached it. I pressed the jumpsuit's switch and touched the engraving on the door. The familiar click. The door creaked open to the dark, damp, rough stone-walled tunnel. The smell of earth and mold enveloped me, a relief after the sterile corridor, the cold breeze. I ran through the tunnel, the faint light of my flashlight ahead. The cavern, the underground lake of dark waters, the crystal pedestal with the pulsating orb, the murmuring voices calling my name. Lena. Lena. Everything was there, exactly as in memory, but with amplified clarity. I knew I was about to access more information. But this time, something was different in the lake. There wasn't just the orb on the pedestal. There was a figure. Floating just below the water's surface, semi-submerged, was the shape of a human body. Completely motionless, face down, wearing a jumpsuit identical to mine. My blood ran cold. Was it another one, trapped here? Or was it me, from a previous reboot? The thought was maddening. Despite the terror, the pull towards the orb was stronger. I approached the edge, my eyes fixed on the orb and, horrifyingly, on the body in the water. The voices from the lake grew in volume, a chorus that seemed to vibrate the very rock of the cavern. Take and comprehend. The orb floated from the pedestal and came towards me, stopping inches from my face. The hum intensified, echoing in my head. This time I didn't hesitate. I touched the orb. The pain was immediate but different. It wasn't a pain in my head, but a pain in my very being. Memories flooded my mind, but they were no longer just the man's. They were mine, my own reboots. I saw myself, the Lena of other Thursdays, waking up in the white room, running through the corridors, choosing right, triggering the countdown, feeling the flash of light and the pain. Then, waking up again, choosing left, discovering the tunnel, the cavern, the orb, seeing the man in the lab, and then rebooting again. But there was more. I saw an earlier moment, the original moment. I wasn't just receiving someone else's memories. I was part of this. I saw the man in the lab. He wasn't alone. There was a team, and I was there, a scientist, part of Project Chronos. The project was about temporal stability, about creating a malleable reality where small errors could be corrected through controlled reboots of time fragments. But something went terribly wrong. The reboot became autonomous, an infinite loop that trapped everyone in the facility. And the only way to contain the project, to prevent the loop from spreading outwards, was to maintain an anchor of consciousness within it. That anchor was me, Lena. I was the guardian of the loop. My mind was the interface. Each reboot wasn't an error, but an attempt by the system to keep me contained, to erase and reset my consciousness so I could continue the containment cycle. The jumpsuit, the headache, the white room, they were all mechanisms to keep me subdued, to prevent me from understanding the truth. The man's memories I had accessed before were those of the project's creator, who was also trapped, trying to pass the truth to me through the system's flaws. The images mingled. The cavern, not a natural place, but a central containment chamber. The orb, an energy core. The body in the water, one of my own failed copies, discarded in an imperfect reboot. The headache became unbearable, a scream from 1,000 minds. The voices of the cavern were not calling my name, but warning me. The system is failing. The loop is expanding. The white light, the excruciating pain that tore through my mind and body. And then, the white ceiling. Have you ever felt the totality of a truth? Not just heard it, but lived it, known it in every cell of your body, even when everything around you tries to make you forget. I'm Lena, and my life, or what's left of it, is containment. The exact date, irrelevant. Time is an illusion here. The first thing I saw was the white ceiling, then the empty walls of a room I recognized perfectly. The air was heavy, but now I understood the smell. Disinfectant to suppress any organic odor, dust to fill the sterile void. The silence was dense, but it no longer scared me. It was the quiet of a system in operation. My heart pounded, not from panic, but from a cold urgency. I know where I am. I know who I am. The memories of Project Chronos, of the lab, of the man, of the team, my own memories as a scientist, were now firmly rooted. The reboots, the orb, the tunnel, the body in the water, every fragment made sense, a piece of the puzzle that was my current existence. I was the anchor, my consciousness, the barrier between this loop and temporal collapse outside. I got out of bed with a clear purpose. There was no more terror, only a chilling resignation and absolute focus. My movements were fluid, efficient. I looked at my hands, at my reflection in the mirror. My eyes now carried an ancient knowledge, a terrifying wisdom. I was Lena, the guardian, the willing prisoner. The gray metal door, locked, the jumpsuit. I put it on, feeling the small switch, my finger already on it. I pressed it. The soft click. I felt the system's energy realigning, recognizing me. The flashlight on my jumpsuit turned on, a beacon in my own darkness. My room door opened. The corridor stretched out, illuminated. The hum in the air was the sound of Project Chronos operating, keeping the fault contained, the smell of antiseptic and metal, now the aromas of my new home. I didn't go straight to the left. There was something else I knew, something the orb hadn't explicitly shown me, but that I had deduced from the man's memories and my own experiences. There was a way to interact with the system, not just to be a passive anchor. The identical doors passed, but I stopped at the third door on the right, the one I had never tried to open in previous reboots because my focus was on the left. This time, the hum coming from it was different, a frequency I recognized from the data simulations the man had seen. It was a knot in the system, an anomaly. I pressed the jumpsuit switch and touched the doorknob of the third door on the right. The click was stronger, a confirmation. The door opened to a small circular room, different from the others I had seen. There was a single terminal in the center, a black screen with a green cursor blinking. It was an interface, a control point. I approached the terminal, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and hope. I touched the screen. A new series of information appeared. Complex codes, equations that I, as a scientist, recognized. Command lines. The system was asking for input. Insert command. Stabilization, modification, reboot. My mind raced. I could try to stabilize the loop, make it more efficient in containment. I could try to modify it, perhaps free myself, or reboot. Not just my consciousness, but the entire loop. But what would be the cost? The man's memories screamed, "Don't interfere directly. The system is unstable. A modification can expand the fault." But my memories, those of my countless reboots, whispered, "You are the anchor. You have control. You can change." I chose modification. I couldn't continue this eternal cycle, and I couldn't risk the fault spreading. I had to try. My fingers hovered over the holographic keyboard that appeared. What command to enter? The memories of Project Chronos guided me. I typed, "Loop anchor, interface reset, parameters true." It was a command to redefine the anchor interface. I wanted to understand what was happening in real time, without the system's suppressions, to free myself from the veil of forgetfulness. As I pressed enter, the room trembled. The hum became deafening. The terminal screen flashed red and displayed a single word, "Error." Then a new message appeared, replacing the error. "Command incomplete. Requires parameter, cycle, cost." Cycle cost? What did that mean? The man's memories and my own merged into a terrifying understanding. Each reboot, each time I woke up in the White Room, had a cost that the system had disguised. A new pang of pain hit my head, like a hammer. The lights in the room flickered. The terminal began to beep frantically. The floor shook violently. The hum in the air turned into a roar. The terminal screen began to scroll text rapidly. "Imminent failure. Loop integrity compromised. Total reset." Panic returned, more intense than ever. It wasn't a common error. I had triggered a self-destruction sequence. The lights went out, plunging the room into total darkness, except for the blinking red glow of the terminal. I felt an invisible hand pull me, the same force that dragged me to the orb, but now with a desperate urgency. I was being pulled into the terminal, into the system itself. One last flash of white light blinded me, coming from all directions. The pain in my head was an explosion. My knees gave out. I fell to the cold floor, the light swallowing me. One last thought as darkness consumed me. Did I make a fatal mistake?